Good evening, councillors and staff, members of the public who have joined us here in Terang, in the Rose Room in the gallery, and for those who may be watching at home. Welcome to the September Council meeting of Corangamite Shire Council. As I said, twice a year councillors go take the council meeting out on the road, and this evening we're at the Rose Room in Terang. I'd like to begin with the prayer. We ask for guidance and blessing on this council. May the true needs and well-being of our communities be our concern. Help us who serve as leaders to remember that all our decisions are made in the best interests of the people, culture and the environment of the Corangamite Shire. Amen. Acknowledgement of country. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land around Corangamite Shire, the Eastern Maar and Wadawurrung people. We pay our respects to all Aboriginal elders and peoples past and present. Mr CEO, apologies for tonight's meeting.
Mayor, there's been an apology from Councillor Vogels this evening.
Thank you. And are there any declarations of conflict of interest?
Mayor, there's been no declarations of conflicts of interest declared.
Terrific, thank you. Before we start the formal part of our meeting, I would like to take this opportunity, since we are in Terang, to acknowledge Mr. Jim Primrose. Jim passed away a couple of weeks ago, but he was it seems quite fitting being in this venue because Jim was the caretaker and secretary of the hall for many years on the Volunteers Committee, which is an absolutely amazing group of people who operate this council-owned facility. Jim was always there. He was always fixing things. He was the go-to man when things were going wrong. He had a building background and undertook a lot of projects on the hall during that time, and he certainly will be sadly missed. So I'd like to extend condolences, my condolences and those of the council, to his family and friends at this sad time. Councillors, the minutes have been circulated of the August meeting. Can someone like to move those, please? Thank you, Councillor Cole and Councillor Macon. Is there any comments on those minutes? Carried. Mr CEO, we don't have any deputations or presentations this evening.
That's correct, Mayor.
Terrific, thank you. We'll move on to item 7, which is committee reports. 7.2 is the Audit and Risk Committee biannual report to Council. And, beg your pardon, I haven't introduced the officers or the councillors sitting around the table. I'm out of my routine, not being in the Clara Centre. So I will start by acknowledging Deputy Mayor Geraldine Kennedy and Councillor Joe Beard, Councillor Kate Macon, Councillor Laurie Hickey, Councillor Nick Cole. To my right is CEO David Ray, Mrs Brooke Love, Director of Works and Services, Mr Aaron Moore, who is the Manager of Building and Planning, and Mr Simon Bicari, Manager of Finance. So I do apologise around the table. Mr Bicari, the Audit and Risk Committee biannual report to Council, September 2023. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. The purpose of the report is to provide Council with a summary of the activities by the Audit and Risk Committee, which have occurred since March 23. The report is provided in accordance with the Committee's Charter and the Local Government Act, which requires the Chairperson to report to Council every 6 months. The recommendations in the report.
Thank you, Mr Vicari. Someone like to move that recommendation, please? Councillor Macon, or Councillor Hickey, sorry, and seconded. I'm going that way.
Sorry, Councillor Kennedy put a hand up, but I'll go again.
Oh,
That's
sorry.
fine.
Absolutely fine. Thank you. No. Councillor Hickey, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm very happy to receive this report. It's a very important job the Audit and Risk Committee do as far as keeping our governance correct. So I'm very happy to accept this report.
Thank you. Councillor Macon.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, no, audit risk have been very busy, as you can see from the list of things that we've done in the last 2 meetings. Had a look at finances and IBAC operations and things like that. But also I'd like to make mention that Colin Hayman is retiring from the Audit and Risk, and I'd like to thank Colin for all his hard work and services to the Audit and Risk Committee. He's been on there for 8 years and 3 as chair. He's been a valuable contributor to the team, and I've learnt a lot of my short time of being on Audit and Risk from Colin. So I personally like to thank Colin for everything he's done. But no, more than happy to accept this report and accept the nomination.
Thank you, Councillor Macon, and I echo your sentiments around Mr Hayman. He has such a long and distinguished background in local government, and he has certainly made an amazing contribution to our Audit and Risk Committee over the past 7 years, and I wish him and Ros all the very best. Councillors, is there anything further on this report? Put to a vote, all in favour? Carried. The item 7.2, the Audit and Risk Committee Annual Assessment. Mr Beccaria.
Yep, thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. The Local Government Act requires Council's Audit and Risk Committee to undertake an annual assessment of its performance. The committee has taken advantage of this opportunity to do so and identified some improvement opportunities. The Act also requires the CEO to table the results of this at the Council meeting, which is the report before you.
Thank you. Someone like to move that recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Canady. Seconded, Councillor Macon. Councillor Canady.
Thank you, Mayor. So when I had a look at the results of this assessment, I thought, oh, it looks a lot like last year's. But I sit on that committee, and I can say that all members on that committee are very cognisant of their roles and really are committed to executing their roles to the best of their ability and seeking improvement. We're really serious about risk and governance and, regulatory matters. And I think what this report's saying to me is that it really speaks to how committed and serious the members of the committee are about doing their work. And I think it's, that it's been quite a critical assessment, self-assessment, and I really believe that it's showing and suggests a desire to do things better and more thoroughly and more effectively, and that the committee is really very committed to ensuring that does occur.
Thank you, Councillor Canady. Councillor Macon.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. I agree with what Councillor Canady has said. There's always open and honest discussions around the table, and some are quite robust, which is quite good in audit and risk. We're looking at things quite thoroughly and honestly and openly, so that is great. And I think whenever we do a self-assessment, we're always quite harsh on ourselves as to what we know and what we don't know and everything else. So sometimes you look at the results and go, that's not exactly what we all thought, but there's always room for improvement, so that's great. And we've taken those on board, and going forward, I'm sure Audit and Risk will do just as good, if not better, job going forward. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Macon. Anything further, councillors? All in favour? Carried. No planning reports this evening. Item 9 are officers' reports. Item 1 is 2022-23 financial statements and performance statement. Thank you, Mr Beccaria.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. This report proposes the Council give in principle approval to the financial statements and performance statement for the year ended 30 June 2023. Also will authorise 2 councillors to certify those statements. The financial result for the year ended 30 June 23 was just over $7 million, which was higher than our adopted budget of $1.8 million. One of the main factors of this was receiving our Grants Commission funding in advance, which has obviously pushed our surplus higher than expected. All the key financial indicators you'll see in the performance statement remain generally strong across the board.
Thank you, Mr Beccaria. Someone like to move financial statements? Councillor Canady. Do I have a seconder? Thanks, Councillor Hickey. Councillor Canady.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, this is really somewhat procedural in terms of the purpose of the recommendation, so I'm not really going to say too much more. I think Mr Beccaria said all that was necessary to be said in relation to this. So it's obviously got to go, be sent off for the words not coming to me. What is it, Simon? Auditing. So, I don't think there's anything further that needs to be said.
Thank you. Councillor Hickey.
Thanks, and thank you very much to Simon Beccaria for preparing his report. It's a pretty thorough report, very interesting read for anyone who's got a spare bit of time. It's 70 pages, so there's a fair bit involved in it, but it shows we're in a very good stand. And I think Councillor Macon had a question. Do you have a question?
I did. Thank you, Councillor Hickey. Very, very observant of you. I do notice that our cash is quite high, Mr Beccaria, and I was just wondering if you could explain to us as to why the cash is at such a high level at the moment, please.
Yes, definitely. So you'll see in the financials, councillors, the cash balance sitting at just over $62 million, which does seem quite high at 30th of June. So there's a few factors here. So councillors would have seen the report that went up last council meeting for the carry forward projects. So they're projects that weren't finished right at the 30th of June 23. So that expenditure gets carried forward into the new year. So of that 62 mil, there's 37, just over 37 mil allocated to those projects. We also have just under $1 million of money held in trust, various bonds and things like that that council are required to keep separate. We've got some reserve funds set aside as well, which once again we're required to cash back. And then of course our grants commission payments 23-24 were paid in advance. That was just over 9.5 mil. So there's quite a lot of that. Majority of that is already allocated.
Thank you. Thank you for that explanation. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Councillor Hickey.
Could I just ask further to that, the carryover, is there a process in place that will, for anybody who's listening, for anybody who wants to know, is there a process in place where that will be spent by a certain time frame?
So all the carry forward projects, Councillor Hickey, are monitored in a project management document we have, and they'll be reported back to council throughout the year as to their progress. Yep.
Thank you.
No problem.
And I think Mr Vicari there's only a few projects. Is there 4 or 5 projects make up the bulk of the carry forwards,
Correct.
big ticket items?
Yep. Correct, Councillor. So majority would be the Unlocking Housing projects, our 12 Apostles project and the Port Campbell Streetscape make up, I'd say, 28-29 mil of that 37.
Great, thank you. Councillors, anything further? All those in favour? Carried. Item 9.2 is the Ready Now grants policy. Mr Moyne, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you, I present council with this report on the Ready Now grants policy. The draft policy has been prepared to replace the Quick Response Grants program, which has operated for over a decade and has provided small grants of up to $5 to eligible community groups across the Shire. Following a review of the Quick Response Grants program, a new recast Ready Now grants program has been prepared, targeted to focus on community benefit and more impactful community support. Councillors have been presented with options to change the grant program and to improve its responsiveness and benefit. The new program policy seeks to redefine the purpose of the program, aligns with Council's community grants program, improves and tightens application and administrative processes, and changes the approval process where grant applications are processed and will be reported to Council. Changes to the policy and program require delegation to the CEO to award grant applications, and an instrument of delegation has also been prepared. The policy and program seeks to improve the process and outcomes of the quick response grants, providing clarity on eligibility criteria and expectations, and streamlining decision making for the benefit of all recommendations provided before you.
Thank you, Mr Moyne. Councillor's recommendation there. Someone like to move it? Councillor Beard, thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Cole.
Thank
Councillor
you.
Beard.
Through you, Madam Mayor. I feel like I'm in the game now. Got a motion up. Through you, I'd just like to mention, and I'm sure there's people out there watching thinking, oh no, they've gone and changed a funding opportunity stream that was really quite easy for people in the community or community groups to be able to access. I think it's good to probably highlight that even though we've run this program for what it's been 10 years, I think we've always had this reviewed nearly every year. We come back to this quick response grants, and we're always trying to make it better. We're always trying to make it fairer and probably more accessible for our community groups. And I think after our most recent review of that, there was a lot of gaps. There were some gaps that we acknowledged over the period of time, and there was also some areas that we really wanted to strengthen. So I think this new policy, meaning Ready Now, we need our community groups to make sure they get familiar with it. And before you go to the efforts of applying for grants, have a look at the policy, but also don't be afraid to give our council staff a call and have a chat with them, because it is a revamped policy. For me personally, I'm really pleased to see that there is this community focus, but it also doesn't mean around what the project is and the people applying for the project or the grant. It's also about how we actually purchase the goods to get that project done. And for one, I've always been a massive advocate of we need to support our local businesses, because when you look at particularly sporting groups, they're the ones who are the sponsors of the clubs. They're the ones who are usually putting money back into these community groups through those sort of avenues of sponsorship. So I'm glad to see that there is an element of emphasis on local purchasing. And if you can't purchase for local for whatever reason that is, give us the evidence so we can learn from that. And I want to give an example because not everyone always understands, but we have Bunnings down the road. There's hardware stores or stores that, hardware stores, like even being in here at Terang, the Terang Co-op. If they don't have it, they can always get it in. So let's try and give our local people, the local businesses, an opportunity. So I'm really pleased with how this policy has come to us tonight. I really do feel it's been strengthened. And if for any reason there is an aspect of it now that people think, well, that rules us out, there's also other still community grants through our normal grants program that comes up throughout the year that still has the ability to access from. So just as I said, please give the officers a call and have a chat with them if you're concerned at all.
Thanks, Councillor Beard. Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think Councillor Beard said most of it. I think this is just tweaking at the edges a little bit to make it be a little bit more user-friendly and a bit easier to operate with. And if someone has a problem, they can hopefully sort it out a bit easier too. So it's minor tweaks. It's not changing the system much. It's a new name. That's about all. A few other details, but nothing major.
Thanks, Councillor Cole. Councillors, anything further on this? All in favour? Carried. Item 9.3 is the interactions with developers policy. Mr. Moyne, please.
Thank you again, Madam Mayor, and through you, I present Council this time with this report on the interactions with developers policy. In August 2022, the Local Government Inspectorate released advice to the sector that Council should create a policy to guide interactions with developers. This advice precluded recommendations made by IBAC through Operation Sandon, which involved an investigation of serious corrupt conduct in relation to planning and property development decisions at the City of Casey. Operation Sandon has now thrown a further spotlight on transparency and integrity of planning decision-making processes, of which Council has a direct involvement in, and this covers both councillors and council officers. A draft interactions with developers policy has been prepared, which picks up on the Local Government Inspectorate advice. The policy establishes definitions and a policy process, building a framework to incorporate a contact register to be maintained for public viewing, with a report presented annually to Council's Audit and Risk Committee and also at a council meeting. The policy seeks to build upon existing statutory provisions and code of conduct requirements, and does not introduce any new requirements for councillors or officers aside from completing a declaration form to complete for the register. Importantly, the policy is not intended to limit or prevent any routine or standard meetings or conversations that councillors and officers may have with community members regarding planning information and processes. Instead, the policy places the framework around meetings and interactions for live or proposed planning matters. The policy is a key way in which council can manage community interest and maintain a best practice standard and integrity in its planning decision making, whilst improving transparency and minimising its risk. Recommendations before you.
Thank you, Mr. Moyne. Councillors, someone happy to move this motion? Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. Do I have a second to Councillor Hickey? Councillor Kennedy.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. This policy, I think, really shows council's commitment to right and proper conduct through the organisation, especially of councillors and senior officers. Operation Sandon and the things that happened in the City of Casey certainly highlight that the reality of misconduct, it does happen, and it's absolutely unacceptable. And, we've developed this policy and designed it to provide greater integrity and guidance and to minimise the risk of improper conduct, by making it absolutely clear to all persons in the organisation, what the parameters are around proper conduct. It's all about strengthening compliance and governance and accountability, and it's absolutely a very important thing, and we need to be really very aware of just what the parameters are in terms of our conduct as councillors and as officers of council.
Thank you, councillor Kennedy. Councillor Hickey.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And it's always a risk when you second a motion moved by Councillor Kennedy, because most of the topics have been, most of the points have been covered. However, policies are something that I get asked about a bit. Why do we have so many policies? And it does give a defined set of guidelines for ourselves and our officers when dealing with people. It gives us something very concrete to fall on. And this one certainly improves transparency and makes sure that we don't fall the same risks that other people may have. So very happy to second this.
Thanks, councillor Beard. Anything further, councillors? Councillor Beard.
Through you, Madam Mayor, and it's probably no surprise to you because I think I had a conversation with you about this, and I was a little bit frustrated that I guess it's been a one-size-fits-all in terms of the findings with the City of Casey and the Sandon report, that I felt we were all tarred with that brush, and I felt we shouldn't be. And then I thought, you know, our practices here, particularly at Corangamite Shire, we've always been above board. We have a really strong code of conduct and a great framework that we work within, and that's not only us, that's our officers as well. But I can see the direction that this needs to head, and whatever we have just needs to be strengthened, which I think this certainly does that. And as Councillor Kennedy said, we're not immune to it. Just because I'm sitting here saying, well, that's just not what we do, doesn't mean that in future it may not happen. So I can see why we've done it, but I just felt a little bit disheartened that we were, I guess, the reputation of local government councillors were probably put in the light that they were, knowing how hard we work to do the right thing. So,
Absolutely. Thank you. Anything further, councillors? All in favour? Carried. Item 9.4, the Planning and Building Fee Waiver Policy Review. Mr Moyne, thanks.
Thank you again, Madam Mayor, and through you I present Council with this report on the Planning and Building Fee Waiver Policy. A policy review has been undertaken and a policy is presented to Council for its consideration. The policy outlines the criteria for the waiver or rebate of both statutory and discretionary fees for planning and building services provided by Council. The policy provides a framework to guide Council officers and assist applicants when considering a request for a waiver or rebate of Council fees. Decisions on statutory fee waivers must be consistent with relevant planning, subdivision and building regulations, and the policy incorporates criteria to ensure that compliance is achieved. The policy includes a focus on community-based and charitable organisations who would normally benefit from access to fee waivers or rebates, where they can demonstrate public benefits, service, charitable actions that may involve capital works, fundraising or other activities and events. The policy was last reviewed in 2017. This review has identified administrative changes to improve the policy function and also incorporates a gender impact assessment in accordance with the Gender Equality Act. Annual uptake of planning and building fee waivers remains strong and supports other community planning and economic development initiatives of Council directed to promote community wellbeing outcomes and prosperity. The recommendations before you.
Thank you, Mr Moyne. Councillors, someone like to move the recommendation to revoke the previous policy and adopt the new one? Thank you, Councillor Beard. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Bacon, thank you. Councillor Beard.
through you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to Mr Moyne. There's really not a lot more to add than what he's already explained in his opening to the report. And it's fairly procedural with minimal changes to the previous policy. I guess the best thing for me is that we can have faith that the planning department don't just put a blanket over everybody. It's sort of they take each planning application on its merits and look at ways, particularly with community groups and that there is ways that we can help support them in their applications and not be a cost burden on them, particularly where there is discretionary. It's a non-statutory fee imposed. So I'm proud of our planning department for that they have that approach. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Macon.
I have nothing further to add. I think Councillor Beard has said it all. Thank you.
Councillors, there's nothing further. I'll put to a vote. All in favour? Carried. Item 9.5, the Information Privacy Policy Review. Mr Ray.
Mayor, thank you, and through you, the report recommends Council adopt the revised information privacy policy attached to the report. The policy ensures that Council complies with its obligations, particularly in regards to the Data Protection and Information Privacy Act. Policy provides guidance to council and the organisation in regards to obligations under that Act, but also other relevant legislation when dealing with personal, sensitive or health information as part of our roles. The current review has only identified minor administrative changes and in particular includes the removal of public registers from the policy, which is no longer required under the 2020 Local Government Act. The review also proposes a 2-year review cycle in accordance with best practice and the recommendations before you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Ray. Councillors, someone happy to move this recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Macon. Seconded. Councillor Hickey. Thank you. Councillor Macon.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. Council believes that protection of an individual's privacy is a key part of its commitment towards accountability and integrity, and that the responsible handling of personal and health information is a key aspect of good governance. The purpose of this information and privacy policy is to inform individuals about Council's obligation and privacy practices, how Council will store and collect it and use this information, how the person can access their personal information and how they may want to complain about possible breaches. This policy applies to all employees, contractors, volunteers and councillors of the council. While the changes may be minor, they are still of importance, as everyone who engages with councils can be assured that information is kept secure and free and not free for the general public. So I'm more than happy to move this recommendation for the policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Macon. I've got Councillor Kennedy down a second, but I don't think you did you?
No, I didn't.
Councillor Hickey.
It was Councillor Hickey. Thank you. I've written down, I'm thinking, I'm sure it was Laurie.
I've nothing further to add, so I'm waiting to stand it up.
Okay, it's fine. Councillor Kennedy, did you want to add anything?
Only that it actually is a key responsibility of council, really, to ensure that we do protect sensitive and personal information of all parties that have any involvement through council. No one ever wants that kind of information breached. So it's sometimes when you say a review and not much change, it doesn't negate the importance of the policy and the importance of what it's protecting.
Thank you. Councillors, put to a vote, all in favour? Carried. Item 9.6, the 2023-24 road sealing contract. Mrs Love, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, this report is to award the contract for the sealing of various local roads throughout Corangamite Shire, as well as Warrnambool City Council in the forthcoming year. For the last 8 years, we've undertaken a collaborative approach with Warrnambool City Council to share resources and have the annual sealing program under one contract. Council's resealing program this year is expected to cover 66 kilometres of roads, or 7% of our sealed road network. Council has undertaken a competitive tender process to seek a qualified and experienced contractor to undertake these works. 5 tenders were submitted, 4 tenders were deemed compliant and 1 non-compliant. A panel comprising council staff from both Corangamite Shire and Warrnambool City Council undertook the independent evaluation of the tender submissions, and it's considered that the best value for money for both of the municipalities has been submitted by Inroads. Inroads have undertaken sealing across council in previous years and a reputable and experienced contractor. Councillors, the recommendation is before you.
Thank you, Mrs Love. Councillors, it's one of the bigger contracts that we let. Someone like to move recommendation? Thanks, Councillor Hickey. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Macon. Excuse me. Councillor Hickey.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. Yes, this is a good way to be able to spread our money a little bit more wisely. The question I'd ask Ms Love, please, is the $39,596 savings. Will that be useful as far as extra sealing? Will that fill a few potholes and the like, possibly?
Thank you, Councillor Hickey. Through you, Madam Mayor. The balance of funds from Council's budget and what has been provided by the contractor will be used for road maintenance activities rather than additional road sealing project.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councillor Macon?
Oh, thank you. And through you, Madam Mayor, I do note that the price has decreased from last year, which is a great. So we're getting a bit more bang for our buck, you could say, which is fantastic. So the price of bitumen has come down. So I'm more than happy that we're getting a little bit more roads sealed under this tender from Inroads. So more than happy to move this recommendation and to put the extra savings into the road recovery funding maintenance.
Thank you. Councillors, any further questions? Councillor Beard?
Yeah, just a comment. I mean, I just think this is great, showing that we have a collaboration, a strong collaboration with the Warrnambool City, and I think it's important that people remember this is our local roads, not the arterial road network, which is what we often cop the flak for. And this is all due to the asset management that we have of our local roads that Miss Love and her staff, you know, watch with a fine tooth comb they go through, and the way they manage our road assets is really commendable. And it's unfortunate when we have our community satisfaction surveys that we do get criticised for the roads, but the unfortunate thing is that the ones that people are usually complaining about aren't actually our road network. So the fact that we can partner with Warrnambool City was great, and you know, all those years ago it's quite visionary actually to do that, to be able to enable both of us to get a better deal for our dollars and for our ratepayer dollars. So I think it's been really successful, and a credit to the team that we can continue to keep this collaboration up as well.
Thanks, Councillor Beard. Any further councillors? All in favour? Carried. Item 9.7 is the transfer of council managed land to the Great Ocean Road Coast and Parks Authority, otherwise known as GORCAPA. Mrs. Love, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you, councillors, this report is to provide an update on the transfer of land and the status of that transfer from council managed Crown land parcels to GORCAPA. Council have been working collaboratively with DECA and GORCAPA to ensure that there is a successful transition of land management. There's 4 parcels that council will who are currently managing that will be transferred over. The parcel Port Campbell Public Purpose Reserve, which comprises the skate park, playground, public toilets and tennis courts and art space, will remain under council management. There are also 2 parcels where council has interest, being the Visitor Information Centre and Transfer Station, which is currently being worked through with the lease agreements in place there between the authority and officers as the transfer process continues. But all in all, effectively at the moment, we're aiming for a 1 November transfer of most of the parcels, and there are 1 or 2 that are still to be confirmed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Love. Councillors, there's recommendation there, so I'd like to move that recommendation. Councillor Macon, do I have a seconder? Councillor Kennedy? Councillor Macon.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. I do note this is just for noting, but I'm pleased to say that we are going to keep the current arrangements in place for the playground and the art space and the tennis courts and everything else like that, as this is what is best for the local community, and making sure that that is supported for them, by them and everything else. And it just stays within our control and their control, and just making sure it's fit for purpose for everything that that local community needs. So I'm very happy that that is staying with us. I note that the other parcels of land are moving on. I'm sure GORCAPA will manage them quite well and work with those groups quite well, and hopefully they get a good outcome for what they are needing. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Macon. Councillor Kennedy?
No, nothing further to
Thank you. Thank you. Councillors, anything further on this item? All those in favour? Carried. Item 9.8 is the authorisation of payment to cumulative spend for transfer station civil works to allow glass receival. Mr Moyne, that's quite a mouthful.
It is very much so. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll present council with this report. seeking payment approval for civil works undertaken at council waste transfer stations to create capacity for acceptance and handling of glass recyclables. GreenCon were engaged by council to undertake these works where the scope has altered to improve collection infrastructure and comply with mandated state government requirements. Project changes have also occurred to comply with OH&S requirements, where the works now exceed CEO procurement delegation and require council approval. The project and works have been supported by $343,000 of state government funding through the Transfer Station Upgrade Fund for upgrades to 6 facilities to enable acceptance and management of glass recyclables. As a result of project changes, expenditure is now confirmed to be $290,000, which as a cumulative spend exceeds that delegation. The delivery of glass recyclable infrastructure has required changes due to a number of factors, including bin types, duration of the project and contractor capability and capacity. These changes were not envisaged when the original quotes were sourced. To enable a review of the procurement process, the matter has been referred already to Council's Audit and Risk Committee as well. The recommendations provided before you.
Thank you, Mr Moyne. Councillors, someone happy to move that recommendation? Councillor Beard, seconded Councillor Canady. Councillor Beard, your next, Councillor Cole.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I actually like following Mr Moyne because there's really not much else to say, because when he introduced the report, he pretty much ticks off everything that we can talk to. But I think this is still a good outcome. It has obviously, as noted, it's gone through the Audit and Risk Committee. It was reported to them because it has been somewhat of an anomaly on what we'd originally voted on, or through delegation, I should say. It hadn't actually come to council. But it's still within the budget of terms of the grant funding we'd received. And it's nice to say, I'm hopeful that grant funding had come through the Sustainability Fund or somewhere where it's been fees that we've paid to the state government for actually having the landfill in the first place. So hopefully we've been able to recoup that funding has come from some of that money. But I think the fact that it still fits within that money that we've been granted is a good outcome. Again, supporting a local company. But I mean, these things can happen, and it's not often until you get into the scope of the works that you realise there's some curveballs thrown. So the fact that the project's been able to somewhat pivot, I think that's been the golden word. I think it was through COVID. I can't believe I just said it again. Look, I still think this is a good outcome, and it's really just a technicality that we have to talk about it tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Canady.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I actually like following Councillor Jo Beard because she says everything. But yes, look, this is transparent in terms of the story behind what's happened. Like, so we know why things have turned out the way they have. So the works need to be completed. We can't just stop them in their tracks. As Councillor Beard said, the budget's there to complete the works, and we are supporting a local contractor. And obviously, there were some elements that were somewhat outside of our control. So we know what's happened. We're over it, and I think it just makes sense to approve the payment.
Thanks, Councillor Canady. Councillors, further? And I think that you mentioned, Mr Moyne, that this has already been reported to the Audit Risk Committee, and while there was a breach of that policy, they were very appreciative of the transparency in notifying them that it happened, and the fact that we'll put other processes in place to ensure it doesn't happen again. So I'm ready to move to a vote. Councillors, all in favour? Carried. Item 9.9 is the Strategic Planning Consultant Procurement. Mr Moyne.
Thank you again, Madam Mayor. I present Council with this report for the contract variation and extension between Council and Kristen Wilkes to continue providing Council with strategic planning and project management services. Ms Wilkes was engaged by Council through a recruitment consultancy in April 2022 via procurement procedural exemption to provide those services. In October 2022, a direct contract was entered into with Ms Wilkes after she'd left the recruitment consultancy and established as a sole trader, again by procurement exemption after some market testing had been undertaken. Ms Wilkes was initially engaged to provide strategic planning support and project management in the preparation and delivery of the Camperdown Production Precinct Master Plan and other relevant strategic projects. Since her initial engagement, these services have expanded into other project delivery, and Ms Wilkes is now involved in a wide range of strategic projects on behalf of Council. Council procurement approval is required to enter a consultancy contract with Ms Wilkes without undertaking a public tender process, whilst delegating to the CEO and Director of Community and Corporate Services payment approval and purchase orders in accordance with the proposed cumulative spend. Recommendations provided before you.
Thank you, Mr Boyne. Councillors, someone like to move this? Councillor Hickey. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Cole. Councillor Hickey.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I'm very happy to move this recommendation. And I think Ms Wilkes does a fantastic job for us as a contractor, and I've worked with her pretty closely with the Camperdown Production Precinct project we've got up and running, and she's been a very valuable contributor and very helpful with the advice and the information she provides. I think she's a very worthwhile or a very well-regarded asset for our planning department. And people like Kristen don't come on all the time, so we're very lucky to have her services, and I'm very happy to accept this recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree with Councillor Hickey. We're very lucky. Kristen is working at Skipton too with the new plan that's going on up there, and she's doing a wonderful job, and she's got runs on the board. So I'm more than happy to keep her on side and keep her going.
Great, thank you. Anything further, councillors? Councillor Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree with this recommendation wholly. Ms Wilkes has provided some really valuable skills to us when we really needed them on some projects that are really important in Corangamite. That are just going to be drivers. These projects that she's been working on, and there's a long list of them, are going to be real economic drivers in Corangamite, and it's super important that we just keep that momentum happening. And we've talked about it so many times. It's so difficult to get really good people in planning and in project management, and Ms Wilkes' skills are certainly proven. And she's also built a lot of project knowledge and intellectual property. And look, honestly, sometimes that just, you can't put a value on that. And she's obviously working within the market with the new hourly rate that she's proposed. That's the market for this kind of skills that she's providing. And, I think we're so lucky that she's willing to continue to work with us at a market price, and that we can just keep these incredibly valuable projects that we're working on, and a lot of them are long-term projects, and just keep that momentum happening for the good of Corangamite Shire.
Thanks, Councillor Kennedy. Councillors, all those in favour? Carried. Item 9.10 is National Local Roads and Transport Congress 2023. Report on attendance. Mrs Love.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, yes, this report is to provide an overview of the attendance of yourself, Councillors Hickey and Councillor Macon, and myself at the recent National Local Roads and Transport Congress in Canberra. The Roads Congress is an important event for us to attend and provides us an opportunity to elevate our priorities. Sessions covered sustainable infrastructure, road funding, asset management, heavy vehicle access, disaster recovery, climate-ready infrastructure, road safety, and waste and recycling. Councillor did approve the attendance of Councillors Constrain, Beard and Hickey at the July meeting, but unfortunately Councillor Beard wasn't able to attend and Councillor Macon attended, but we weren't required to get approval for that in accordance with Council's professional development policy. So all in all, the Congress provided an opportunity to hear and gain insights from decision makers within the industry, and also to hear and discuss future opportunities and challenges. And the recommendation is before you.
Thank you, Mrs Love. It was a really good Roads Congress this year. I think last year became very technical and probably just was a little bit above my head, but this year it was excellent. It was particularly incorporating the topics around climate change as well as waste. I think it was really valuable. So thank you, councillors, for that opportunity. We did take the chance while we were up there, we did meet with officers from Minister Murray Watt's office, Minister for Agriculture and Emergency Management, as well as Ted O'Brien, the Shadow for Climate Change, and Darren Chester. So we certainly raised issues that are impacting Corangamite Shire with those members. Someone like to move that recommendation, please? Thank you, Councillor Macon, and Councillor Hickey second. Councillor Macon, did you want to add something further?
No, I don't have much to add. I think you've said it all. You summed it up quite well. I went last year as well, and I agree with you. Last year was a little bit technical and went down into the deep dives of things, but this year was a bit more understandable. And I'm sorry, Councillor Beard, you couldn't go, but thank you for letting me step in your shoes and go for the time being. It was a great networking opportunity to see other councils and see what they're up to and what they're facing as well. And 9 out of 10 times they're facing exactly the same thing as us. So, no, it was great to go, and I thank you very much for allowing me to go. So, nothing further to add.
Thanks, Councillor Macon. Councillor Hickey.
Thanks, thank you, Mayor. Yes, it was a worthwhile few days. I believe it was a good opportunity to meet with fellow councillors and talk about their issues, which seem to be very similar to the ones we face here in Corangamite Shire. It was also a great opportunity to visit Parliament House and the members who we got to speak to there. The conference itself was a great focus on climate change, as you said, and development of area infrastructure. But I also found the trade displays very useful in what they were offering to the community as well. So I spent a lot of time down there, and it was I thought it was very, very well and good place to attend. So I recommend it again.
Thank you, Councillor Hickey. Councillors, if there's nothing further, I'll move that. Thank you. Put it to vote. Item 911, the Community Planning Reserve Allocation. Mr Moyne.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you I present this report for consideration of approval of financial allocations for 3 projects aligned with community plans. The Community Planning Reserve was established in 2014 to allocate and provide funds to enable implementation of small community projects aligned with those community plans. Previously, small annual amounts have been allocated to community groups from the reserve in accordance with those community plans. Many community plans are now at or near the end of their 10-year life, and many projects have now been delivered, while some larger projects are still outstanding and will rely on other funding sources through council budgets, grant programs or other external funding opportunities. This process has been reviewed, and to ensure transparency and accountability of expenditure, any allocation from the reserve now requires a council decision. Recommendations will be supported by a report covering key project information, descriptors, policy alignment and benefit. 3 projects are submitted for council's consideration this evening, being Lismore Cemetery Trust for development of final development of their walking trail loop, Camperdown Botanic Gardens Trust for renewal of large entrance signage, garden signs and direction signposts, and works at the Darlington Hall to undertake re-stumping and drainage works at that facility. Each of these applications demonstrates alignment with the community plans, with funding to be allocated from the reserve to enable their project delivery. The recommendation is provided before you.
Thank you, Mr Moyne. Councillors, someone like to move the recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Cole. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Beard. Thank you. Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. These 3 community planning jobs that are coming up, Lismore, Camperdown Botanical Gardens and the Darlington Hall, they're all great community assets, and I'm very happy to move them. 2 of them are in my area. One I'm always taken a bit of an interest in as well, so I'm more than happy to move them. And they're just good little jobs that need doing in the community, and it'd be good to see them done and just make things a lot easier around the area. The drainage around Darlington, it's a very flat area around the hall, and the drainage is important. Gets the water out from under the hall. It's being re-stumped, so it'll last another 150 odd years. It's already that old, so one of the oldest halls in the Shire, if not Victoria. So it'd be good to see it preserved. So I'm more than happy to move these.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. Certainly a very active volunteer group at the Darlington Hall. They're very good at their grant applications. Councillor Beard, did you have something to add?
Yes, I will, and through you, Madam Mayor. I just think, having been part of the community planning process back when it first started, back in 2000, and I think that's actually how I got on
14.
council. It was 2014, but I really do think that it was before that, and that is why I got on council. But I'm still here. But to be honest, I think it's important that some of these communities, the people that were behind those community plans, have sort of somewhat come and gone in a way that, they move on to another project or another part of the community. And there's these reserves sitting there for often allocated projects that just haven't been finished or, I guess, somewhat acquitted too. So I just want to put out a reminder to those communities that if you've got access to this report, there's some significant funds there. And I know from when the plans first come to the council table that they were significant projects too, and it'd be nice to see some of those projects finally get over the line. And often it can just be that there's been a change in personnel in some of those community groups. So for me, I just probably wanted to put out a reminder that there is that funding sitting there. And at the time when these plans were done, there was significant projects that were put over the council table. It was a really exciting process for council to go through. And I think Mr Moorfield, he's definitely still there at council and no doubt of great support to these community groups over the years and would no doubt still take the phone calls, I'm sure, or Mr Moyne's department too. But I think it's important that people do check that and see that there is still funding there for our community benefit.
Thank you, Councillor Beard. Councillors, anything further? All those in favour? Carried. Item 9.12 is the confirmation of a community grant. Mr Moyne.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, I present this report to correct an administrative error and to confirm on the council record regarding the award of payment of a community grant. A project for the Camperdown Amateur Basketball Association was inadvertently left off the list of projects presented to council previously, which sought funding of $1,940 for the purchase of new basketball singlets. The grant has already been paid to the applicant. This was an administrative error, and the inclusion of the grant does not change the total value of council's 2023 allocation. The recommendation is provided before you.
Thanks, Mr Moyne. Councillors, this one's fairly straightforward. Does someone like to move this one? Thank you, Councillor Hickey. Seconded, Councillor Cole. Councillor Hickey.
Yes, very happy to move this recommendation. Mayor, it does fit in with our council plan, doesn't it, of having a connected community and a healthy and active and resilient community, and basketball is sort of one of those activities that does meet those challenges. So I'm very happy to move that this money will be contributed to the Camperdown Amateur Basketball Association.
Thank you. Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just tying up some paperwork, I think. So we'll do that in a moment.
Thank you. I'll put it to a vote, councillors. All those in favour? Carried. Item 9.13 is to grow and prosper programs and grants. Mr Moyne.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I present this report regarding the Catapult section of Grow and Prosper 2023 to 2033 and seek approval for the new Economic Partnership Program and Business Assistance Scheme policy. Council adopted Grow and Prosper in May this year, and that seeks to establish a long-term economic development and prosperity framework for the Shire. The framework provides levers for council interventions and action plans organised into three sections, namely platforms, catapults and elevators. Catapults are intended to be stimulators, interventions and actions necessary to propel key themes and achieve sustainable outcomes. In line with Grow and Prosper, an economic partnership program and business assistance scheme have been developed. The Economic Partnership Program aims to establish an integrated planning and development process which is responsive to council and community needs and will lead to positive outcomes with key responsibility areas in place. These proposed changes the aim is to formalise and bring together council's economic development and planning units in a way that incorporates research, monitoring, delivery, advocacy and facilitation. These changes require tailoring of service delivery to implement economic development and planning responsibility key areas. The Corangamite Economic and planning partnership will be established to enable council to take a lead role in the implementation of action plans and take local ownership of projects in alignment with activities. And the partnership seeks to include establishment and a formalised development facilitation and investment system, a task force and strategic investment planning and mapping, and a triage system for business related and economic development inquiries. The business assistance scheme itself aims to make clear that Corangamite has significant advantages and is one of the most business-friendly municipalities in the state, if not the country. A business assistance scheme is proposed to provide support and deliver on this commitment. The scheme will support and provide targeted assistance to business that will result in employment and investment opportunities aimed at creating a healthy, sustainable and strong business sector in the Shire. A policy has been drafted to provide a framework and support the scheme's delivery, covering 4 areas being business facade improvement, creative industries and placemaking, community enterprise and fees and enabling infrastructure, existing budget allocation through economic development, business facade improvement and investment attraction is proposed to be utilised to deliver these programs. The partnership and scheme will take Grow and Prosper forward into the future and enable action plans to be further implemented. The recommendations before you.
Thank you, Mr Moyne. Councillors, there's a recommendation there to adopt the business assistance scheme policy, revoke 2 other grant policies and endorse the Corangamite Economic Partnership Program. Someone like to move that, please? Councillor Kennedy, do I have a seconder? Councillor Picky, thank you. Councillor Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Mr Moyne, for that verbal essay.
There's a lot there.
There certainly is. There's so many elements to Grow and Prosper, and we've talked about it a lot, and it's truly one of the most exciting things that we've worked on in Corangamite Council. I think you would all agree. Just aimed at prosperity for Corangamite in the future, and recognising and grabbing onto the opportunities that we have, and supporting business and culture, all those things that Mr Moyne spoke of. So this really is something that's progressing that program, and it's it's an obvious thing. It's the next step that we need to take, and so it's it's an obvious thing. We just support it, in my view. So,
Thanks, Councillor Kennedy. Councillor Hickey.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Very happy to support this Grow and Prosper. It's certainly community driven and with community ideas. It's going to be very good for the future generations. So we're happy to second this recommendation too.
Thank you. Anything further, councillors? Councillor Beard.
I just think we just have to simplify it, and it's just basically it's a few policies rolled into one, grant opportunities for our community, and it's phenomenal. And as you said, Councillor Kennedy, there's a lot of levels to it. But I think for our community, let's not overthink it. And if we're unsure of how this is going to play out, just pick up the phone and make a phone call. The programs, the grant programs particularly, have done so much for our streetscapes and our business precincts. So I can't wait to see. I have a feeling, though, we will be reviewing this policy, because it's like most of our grant policies that we review it. But I look forward to see how it transitions into the broader community. But I think the key is not to overthink it, and it's going to be exciting.
Thank you, Councillor Beard. Councillors, anything further on this one? All in favour? Carried. Item 9.14, and for the very last time, the quick response grants allocation for September 2023. Mr Moyne.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I hope everyone doesn't get too sentimental here. I present this report to Council for the final time regarding the Quick Response Grants Program. 2 applications have been received which have been assessed as being compliant with the policy, being an application from the Timburn Indoor Netball Association and one from the Darren Allen Progress Association. The recommendations provided before you.
Thank you. Now, someone like to move this recommendation? Councillor Cole. Councillor Macon, second. Old time's sake, Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, yeah, last time I get the chance to do this. Both very worthy applicants this month. Timberland Indoor Netball Association for the bibs for the junior girls competition, which is a new team, and that's a great thing to sponsor. I think young girls getting involved in sport and outdoor activities outside of the classroom, and also the Darrenallum Progress Association. They're setting up a hub in Darrenallum in the old a building that's maternal childcare building, I think it was, has been repurposed now into a creative hub, and this is to set up so they can have internet in there. So they're not ongoing expenses, reoccurring expenses. They're new things, new ventures that are both coming into fruition, we hope, and I wish them best of luck for both.
Thanks, Councillor Cole. Councillor Mayfield.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. I don't have much further to say other than the Timberland Indoor Netball Association is a great cause. It's been missing for quite a number of years, so I must congratulate Amy Roslin and the team down there for getting this up and running again. Getting 47 young girls into the competition is just amazing. Considering it started out with nothing, and in the first few days you had nearly 30 kids registered, so it was pretty amazing. So anything to help kids get active and be active in the town and community is great, so more than happy to support this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, nothing further? All in favour? Carried. Item 10 is other business. Is there anything any councillor wants to raise at this time? No? Item 11 is open forum. There's nobody online, Mr CEO.
Madam Mayor.
Thank you. This is an opportunity if anyone in the gallery, Mr Reardon or Mr McKinnon, would like to ask council a question or make a statement. Do you want to just pop up to the lectern, Mr McKinnon? Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity, and I'm pleased to be able to raise a couple of points. One in particular, as recently as today, the Probus Club met, and as we're going through and seeing those grants that are the question, we've got a requirement for a new computer, so I'm just not exactly sure where that fits, but we'll certainly be following that through. And as I heard that last one of the quick response grants, is that closing, or was it the last one
That was the last. That's been replaced by the Ready Now grant program,
Right.
which we talked about earlier
Yeah.
this evening. Yeah.
Well, I assured the members today that there are grants available. We're not sure which one and whether we do qualify, but we will be making application, and I guess to speak to Gary Moorfield perhaps is.
Well, there's several grant programs. So for a new computer, the Ready Now grants are up to $500. So you may be eligible for that. Otherwise, there's the, it's not community facilities, it's the community grants, which we do, but we've just done those in July. So they won't be coming up until the end of sort of the next May, June. We'll be looking at those. It'll depend whether or not you can hang on, but you're probably eligible for a Ready Now grant.
Right.
Jump on and have a look at the criteria.
Right.
Yeah. Well, the criteria, the policy is actually in the hard copy of the agenda that you've got.
Yeah.
So you'd be able to have a look and see if you qualify, or give the team a ring and have a chat to them, give Gary a ring.
Right. The other issue is the town entrance, and Progress Association, along with the Lions Club, and we've met with Gary Moorfield already, and it's progressing quite well. So you'll be aware of that as it progresses, I guess. They're the only. I see that I'm allowed 2 issues.
Yes, you can. Have you got another one? No?
Oh, well, I've got 2 questions. State school, where the Terang State School, where it's at, and I know the Historical Society are interested and have made some inquiries. And the other one is just on the subdivision with building blocks in town that's just been released. That's I didn't read it, but someone told me about it today. So they're the state school and the building blocks there.
Mr. Rao, we've had discussions with some members of the community around the state school and the future of the state school. Obviously, it's not a council asset, it's a state government asset. Mr. Ray, do you want to?
Thanks, Mayor. Through you, in response to your question, Mr. McKinnon, there is a process the state undertakes to divest itself of surplus assets. And as part of that process, council is given first right of refusal whether or not it wishes to purchase that land for either its own use or community use. We've been made representation from members of the Terang community for potential future use of that facility. We'll continue to work with those community representatives, but at a future point, that land will be declared surplus to government needs, and it's probably, in terms of tenure, it takes a matter of years rather than weeks to get that outcome. But we'll continue to work with the community group.
We certainly don't want it to sit there like Colac High School has sat
Yeah,
there for so long at the
That
entrance
just
to
keeps
the
cropping
town.
up as what is not wanted to happen here.
I agree. Mr. Moyne will be able to answer the question regarding subdivisions.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr. McKinnon, for your question. So I believe your question relates to the development plan review that council's undertaking, which is the residential growth area on the east of town, south of McRae's Road, sort of between McRae's Road and Little's Lane. So that's an existing area zoned for under a residential zone, zoned for residential subdivision. The council's been going through a process to update a development plan that seeks to establish a new direction and update the design and layout of the future residential subdivision that might occur there. So we're consulting with those direct landowners at the moment and have previously spoken to them, and then also seeking community feedback on the direction and the design and layout of the plan. So that's available online. That's only recently gone online for public comment this week.
Yeah, it hit the gossip trail today.
Oh, right.
Okay, thanks very much for
We've got
that,
it straight from Mr. Moyne's mouth. He'll be well over it then.
for the opportunity to, and I'm a bit surprised that there aren't some more people here, but interestingly, the hospital committee, the hospital board have an open meeting tonight at Mortlake.
It might have a bigger crowd.
So, yeah, you're competing, and there is a film on it, the commercial of it.
So we don't stand a chance, really.
Frank normally goes to that, so it's a special.
How lucky are we though? that we've got
Thanks for
them
coming.
both? Thank
That's
you.
right.
And half those questions were Frank's, so that's.
I was going to say, did you have anything you wanted to ask, Mr. Reardon?
Frank?
Okay, you like mentioned Jim Primrose.
Yeah.
Jim looked after this establishment for over 10 years. He was very professional in what he did. He was a member of the Rotary Club at the same time, and it's all sad what's happened. I don't know at what stage they are in getting someone to take his place. I'm an honorary member of the Rotary Club at the moment, so I'm sort of here and there.
You certainly had big shoes to fill. Brooke, did you have a comment on
Yeah,
that?
thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, Mr. Reardon, we were at the celebration of Jim on Friday, and there was discussion that his grandson, who's a Year 11 student, is going to take over.
Oh, wonderful. It's a dynasty. That's great.
The cleaning function, sorry, not the secretarial function.
Oh, terrific. Councillors, yeah, thanks, Mr. Reardon. If there's nothing further, thank you for your attendance. Thank you for coming and joining us tonight and not going to the hospital meeting or the film. We really appreciate you both be there. And to those watching online, thank you. And we'll see you next month. Thank you.